Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 89. Today's quote will be spoken by the man himself, Tyler Durden.
Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. We're very, very pissed off.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. The first rule of Indie Film Hustle is you do not talk about Indie Film Hustle. No, actually, the opposite is you talk completely and a lot about Indie Film Hustle. But we're going to get to our guest in just 1 minute. So before we start, I want to, first of all, thank everybody who contributed to the This Is Meg crowdfunding campaign. We hit our goal. We're now a little bit over 100%, and I couldn't have done it without the tribe and all the people that helped us and supported this crazy idea of doing this movie. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. We still, believe it or not, have as of this moment, over 10 hours left. And we do have a stretch goal. We added another 2,000 to see if we can get a little extra money for sound post-production. Any little bit extra help is the one area of post-production I don't have control of is audio. I control everything else. I have covered anything visually I can get done, but that audio has always been a little bit of a problem for me. So any little extra money would be amazing. So it's not too late. Head over to thisismeg.com, and we still have a ton of perks, especially access to the Indie Film Syndicate, as well as all our courses, cool autograph stuff by James Cameron and Guillermo del Toro. If you want to be on the podcast, there's still spots open to be a guest on the podcast, and so on. So that's thisismeg.com. Now, I want to talk about the last episode 88, which is Why the Fuck Are All Filmmakers Always So Broke episode. And that episode has been by far the most commented on, and I've gotten the most love back from any podcast I've ever done, or anything, honestly, I've ever done on Indie Film Hustle. I did it from a place of real love and passion and anger for my fellow filmmakers, and I really hope it helps people and inspires them. And based on the emails I've gotten from around the world, I mean, I've gotten stories from Sweden, stories from South Africa, stories from Europe, from Australia, and then throughout the US, Canada, even Brazil. I mean, I've gotten so much response. It was overwhelming. And it's, I think, the most retweeted podcast we've had, as well as commented on Facebook and all the Facebook pages we have. So thank you guys so much. And I really am glad that hit a nerve with everybody. And I really hope it helps people. So if you liked it, please share it, because I'm going to promote that podcast as the podcast to listen to. If you're going to listen to one episode of this series, Indie Film Hustle Podcast, that is the episode to listen to, because it really does shake shit up, if you will. Now, I'm not going to start cursing left and right from now on, okay? So don't worry. Today I threw a couple curses in because, we had Tyler Durden at the beginning of this episode, which brings me to this amazing episode we got today. I stalked this poor man on Twitter for months until he finally decided to do the show. And Jim Uhls, who wrote arguably one of the best films in the last 20 years, Fight Club, and probably one of the best. It's on my top 5 of all time. I think it's a modern masterpiece and can be on the shelves with many of the classic films. And I think it will age very well, as it has. It was released in 1999. And if you put it on right now, it does not lose a beat. It is remarkable film. And Jim was a screenwriter on that, and he was able to take Chuck's book and Chuck, the author, I won't say his last name because I can never say his last name, Chuck Palahniukâ, sorry. But Chuck, he took Chuck's book and made an unfilmable movie filmable. And him and David Fincher really worked out the kinks of getting the story onto the screen. And we talked for the first probably almost 30 minutes about Fight Club and all his experiences in Fight Club, how it got started, how he worked with Fincher, some inside stories, some fun stories of how the whole process came out, what happens after the movie came out, and so on. And it is so enlightening. And that's part one, kind of the first half of the interview. The second half of an interview is, and I use this word a lot, but this is really kind of a master's class in screenwriting of how he works in screenwriting, how he does things in screen, like how his process is. But the most amazing thing I've ever heard for screenwriters, and I think you can apply this to directors and filmmakers as well, is in the last part of the interview. He dishes out this amazing advice for screenwriters who are just starting out, and the simplicity of his suggestion is so profound that is easily the greatest piece of advice I've ever heard for a screenwriter. So definitely wait till the end. There is so many knowledge bombs being dumped on you guys in this episode. So you'll want to listen to this more than once. Jim is a pleasure. He was so much fun to talk to. It was just like two guys sitting down over coffee and just, shooting the shit. And it was really, really, really a pleasure and a thrill to talk to the writer of one of my favorite films of all time. And at the end of the episode, if you guys stay until after the end of the episode, I'll give you a link to Jim's online course on how to write a screenplay. It's called the Screenwriters Toolkit. It's a great, great course. I've taken the course, and Jim is awesome. Really, really, really awesome. And it definitely has a different perspective than other screenwriting courses I've taken. So it's definitely something you should check out. So I'll give you that link at the end of the episode. So I'm not going to babble on anymore. Please enjoy my interview with Jim Uhls. I'd like to welcome to the show Jim Uhls. Thank you, man, so much for taking the time out to share some knowledge and drop some knowledge bombs to the Indie Film Hustle tribe.
Oh, you're welcome. It's I've been pressured. I mean, it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, I have stalked you on Twitter, so
yeah.
That's how I got a hold of you. So
it's very effective to stalk on Twitter.
Apparently it is. I've gotten. You'd be amazed at the people I've gotten on the show purely because I've stalked them on Twitter. So Twitter is pretty powerful.
Yes, indeed.
So Jim, I wanted to get started. I want to take you back to the beginning of it all. I know, all the way back when you were a small child. No, when did you get started in the business, and how did you get started in the business? Like, what brought you to this crazy carnival that we call the film industry?
Well, at UCLA, I got a combination degree that was both playwriting and screenwriting, and I entered it as a playwright with some plays as a background, that I wrote, after high school and early college. And I was like thinking, well, I'll look into both of them. I'll study both of them. And it was a great program to go through. And
I hear it's a really great program, the UCLA program, especially for screenwriters.
It's still top notch. And so I was able to get plays done there at UCLA, which is more of an instant gratification than a screenplay, which is, you write it and you hope.
15 years later, maybe something will happen.
So I was able to see actors doing my stuff and all that, and it was great. And a bunch of us, we went out into the world after that, and some friends of mine, had connections and got agents, and then that's how I got an agent. And for quite a while, he was using a couple of my sample screenplays to seek out work for me, and I have got work here and there, rewriting work. I sold a screenplay. It didn't get made, but
something I hear a lot of in the business. There's a lot of big screenwriters I've talked to. They're like, Yeah, I've sold a ton of screenplays, and not many of them have been made. But
Yeah. Well, in my case, I was paid to write them,
right,
and then they didn't get made. That's what started to happen after I sold one.
I got it.
But either way, they didn't get made, so they ended up in the same pile.
Exactly.
And then one of my spec scripts which was about a very incendiary, kind of funny but dangerous relationship with this man and this woman. It had some heat on it, and it was used as a sample when Fight Club was going to be when it was being considered. Actually, what was happening is the book was in galleys and it was being rejected by every studio in town.
Mm-hmm.
When a friend passed it to me and said, "I don't think this is going to be made, but I think you should read it." And so I read it, and I just was blown away. And I thought, yeah, nobody will make this into a movie. It's too good.
and it's a pretty difficult novel to translate to the film medium. I mean, it's pretty intense, to say the least.
Yeah, at the time, I was luckily enough, I was dumb enough to not know how difficult it was. And
as Orson Welles says, ignorance is the best form of confidence.
Yeah, right. And so I thought, well, even though it'll never get made, if somebody's hired to write it, I'd love to have that gig, because it'd certainly be fun to be paid to do it, even though there's no chance,
Mm-hmm.
So of it being made. And so my sample basically got me the job. I was acquaintances already with Fincher from a place called the Pad of Guys, which also had people. It was just a place where people hung out. They were screenwriters, basically.
Where the Pad of Guys?
Yeah.
Is the Pad of Guys still around?
No.
Okay.
No. But people like Shane Black were there, and
Sure.
Fred Decker, and so in any case, it worked. The sample worked, and I got the job. And
Was that Fincher that got you the job, or?
Well, I mean, they all decided basically together. Fincher, Laura Ziskin was running Fox 2000, and Fox main studio had already said no way.
Mm-hmm.
But Fox 2000 had a certain autonomy as a division, and she wanted to make it. She was the only place in town that wanted to make it. And when she got Fincher on board, she got, I guess, the really high up powers at Fox to say, you can proceed with developing a script. And so
now Fincher, so everyone understands where Fincher was at his career at that point. He had already made 7. Well, he did Alien 3, 7, and then The Game. So
The Game, actually.
Was The Game before or after Fight Club?
Game wasn't, actually, that's an interesting part of the story. He hadn't made The Game yet.
So it was right off of 7 then when this started being developed.
Right.
Oh.
So he had made 7, and it certainly made his deals from that point a lot sweeter.
Yeah, 7 tends to do that.
And so I started writing, and I was still writing the first draft when he called me and said, "I'm going to go make a movie."
Okay.
And so we went to make The Game, and Fox had to actually, I was still going to finish the first draft, but in terms of my other steps, which were in the contract, a rewrite and a polish, they had to postpone those steps. But when I turned in the first draft, after really doing, a lot of my own internal drafts, like over and over and over and over again.
Sure.
Apparently, I got it right. The studio was excited. Laura was excited. Fincher was excited. And the producers when we began, Atman Entertainment was a combination of Josh Donnan and Ross Bell. And then Josh Donnan left that company and became an agent again. He had been before. So it was just Ross Bell. And the studio brought in, another producer, Art Linson, to join. And so it was Art Linson and Ross Bell producing, then also along with Sion Chafin, who was Fincher's producing partner.
So did
So-
when
Yeah.
you guys were getting Fight Club off the ground, obviously Fincher's name helped a bit to get the thing started, but I think from what I've read, because I've studied Fight Club immensely, it's actually one of my top 5 films of all time. I mean, it's an absolute masterpiece. No, I mean it really is. Anytime anyone asks me, I'm like, well, Seven and Fight Club are up there somewhere, up there with Shawshank Redemption and and a couple other ones, and Blade Runner. But from what I understand with Fight Club, I mean, the studio was going and going, but Brad Pitt really kind of took it over the top at that point, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's what took it over the top for the studio. They well, we've got Brad Pitt doing the film with David Fincher, and we're
Yeah, and the way Hollywood thinks, well, they did Seven, and Seven was a hit.
Yeah, they love that pairing again, and then another great idea, and actually Art Linson, as I recall, had the idea, which was the casting of the non-named character Jack, to use Edward Norton, who at that time had his first year of movies coming out, his first ones. He had 3, and they were all very different roles,
Yeah, he had an Oscar nomination off of Primal Fear, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember, but I wouldn't be surprised. But in any case,
he wasn't a big star by any stretch yet. He was just getting out.
But he had the kind of upward trajectory that was also very appealing to the studio and everybody. We liked his acting chops, of course, and so having him and then a great actor like Brad Pitt really, really, put it over the top.
And Helena Bonham Carter was just,
I remember, there's a lot of names of people that were kind of more like that urchin, female waif type. And David called me and said, "What do you think about Helena Bonham Carter?" I just thought it was so high class. Like, wow, she'd play that part,
like she was in Merchant Ivory movies. Like, what's
Yeah. But she'd been in a Woody Allen movie where she was playing someone that was sort of a tough American character, and she clearly could do anything, really. So I was just amazing. That sort of like brought up sort of the art level of the whole thing.
Right. All of a sudden you had some art house cred.
Yeah.
It's not just a big studio movie. Now, the casting of that movie is brilliant across the board. I mean, Meatloaf and Jared Leto and all these, like, how, I mean, you obviously were pretty close to the production. Obviously, you just didn't write a script and went away. You were pretty close. Am I correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he showed me, we sat down, the two of us, David, and showed me the first half of the rough cut, on his home theater system. And my jaw was just on the floor. It's like everybody was right for their roles. Everything looked and sounded and was like everything that I imagined it. I was just floored by it.
How? Go ahead.
Oh, that's all.
No. How much freedom did both you and David have during the making of this? I mean, because this does not seem like a studio movie. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that would have normally been nixed off of a script and never even gotten to a production stage. How much freedom did you guys have, and did you have a lot of battles that you can talk about?
Yeah, that I can talk about. Well, I mean, all I know is that there certainly was a lot of freedom afforded Fincher, and I know that both he and the other producers and Art Linson would talk about having conversations with the studio and say, well, their eyes were kind of like this when I said that, so I don't know. But they managed to keep it protected, really, the whole way through. I know that in the middle production, this story's been told, but Laura Ziskin didn't want the line, and it's a line from the book that.
Oh, I know. I think I know which line you're talking about.
I want to have your abortion, and I don't really want that line. It was actually David came up with the substitute. I haven't had sex like that since grade school. And,
yeah.
Laura said, "Can we change it back to I want to have your abortion?"
Jesus.
which was not changed back though.
No, I mean, but that other line does work quite well in the movie. I mean, I know. I think I heard that story in an interview with David too. That he said that. I was like, that's such a great line. He's a dark human being, isn't he?
Well, I mean, what I would say about this is he fires on all cylinders. I mean, he had a reputation up to that point. I mean, it started to change with Seven, which was such a great character, performances and meaty drama and all that, and suspense. And, but he'd been labeled a visual guy. I mean, he's everything: character, story, humor,
tech,
dramatic moments. The whole thing. He really has a comprehensive grasp of making a film.
He is a contemporary to Kubrick in many ways. I know he is a devotee of Kubrick's from what I've read.
What's interesting, you brought that up, because when I first read The Galleys of Fight Club, when I was finished, I kept thinking Clockwork Orange.
Oh.
And that was part of why I was thinking this will never be done, here by a major studio in the United States. I was like, no, it's not going to happen. But I always kept thinking of Kubrick the whole way through, because I feel like Fight Club is definitely something that is in the same line of films that go back to Clockwork Orange.
Right. I actually probably about a year ago, I'd watched Clockwork Orange again, and I hadn't seen it in probably a decade, and my mouth was on the ground. I forgot, like within the first 20 minutes. the stuff that Kubrick got away with. I'm like, my God, if this movie comes out today, it would cause an insane amount of controversy. Today, I can only imagine what it did in the 70s. So I think Fight Club is definitely deserves a place on that mantle without question, because there's stuff in Fight Club that you just go, how did this get through? Like, how did this get made? Intercutting, I mean, I think that was the first any penis I've seen.
Male, yeah. Male, as I recall.
On a studio movie. Like, I remember seeing it at like the AMC. I was like, did they just flash a penis on the screen?
Right.
Now, let me ask you, what's your process to adapt something like this? Like, what was your, it was like a lot of people said it was almost impossible to adapt into this medium. So what was your process as an adapting, not only this, but other material into the medium of film? Like, what was your process in this for Fight Club specifically?
Well, to start with, I wanted to say that it's very interesting, but Ross Bell had someone type the novel as a screenplay, and it was 500, 600 pages, and it was just insufferable. You couldn't, because you wanted to like read parts of it with actors.
Right.
And it was just like, well, you obviously can't do it that way. That's not how you adapt a novel.
Yeah, The Godfather would have been.
He wasn't doing it for that
pages.
purpose. He just wanted to have some actors read parts of it and stuff like that. But it was just interesting to see. It was a very vivid way of seeing that you cannot just turn a novel into a screenplay. So I knew that what everybody wanted at the end of the line, when I turned into first draft, was a screenplay that everybody would want to make. And that was the overriding priority. It has to be a screenplay. It has to work as a screen story. Fortunately, I sort of stylistically sort of melded with Chuck Palahniukâ and put in the stuff where I put in my own material. It seemed to mix with where I was using stuff from the book. But the main thing is that structurally, I had to put together something that worked as a screen story. And I would take the book and go through and use a highlighter to highlight all the stuff. Like, I want to use this, I want to use that, because the book has got a lot of stuff, and it can't all go into the movie, right? So I would do that, and then sort of use that as a guide, and then sit down and stare at a blank screen for hours on end, and be full of fear.
Yes.
But it's interesting that sometimes writing scenes that feel like they're like you felt when you read those scenes in the book, writing them differently than they are in the book is what it took to make it seem like it was from the book. It was actually the changing that made it seem more like it was from the book. It was an odd thing. But I think that's one of the parts of adaptation, is to convey the spirit of the book sometimes means you're changing something.
Got it. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because I mean, I remember when I first watched the first Harry Potter, I'm like, well, they skipped that part and they skipped that part. I'm like, well, come on.
Right.
I mean, enough's enough, but absolutely. Now, how involved was David? Oh, first of all, how involved was Chuck in your process, or did you talk to him at all?
Yeah. David and I brought him down a couple times. The first time we just hit him with all these questions. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And Chuck would say, I don't know. And then we said, for instance, the scene in which Tyler's driving the car and swerving into headlights while he's forcing, we call the narrator Jack. He's never called a name in the movie or, in the dialogue of the script at all. But we had to put a name down. So we put Jack down. When Tyler's forcing him to answer questions and threatening to have a car accident. Well, in the book, it's not Tyler. It's just another one of the Project Mayhem space monkeys driving. And we said, why wouldn't it be Tyler? And Chuck goes, wow, that's a really good idea. But he was also great. He also did clarify a lot. I don't want to make it sound like it was all like that. He did clarify a lot, and he also was extremely supportive. He had no official, attachment to the project, but in this casual, friendly way, he was just a wonderful presence, supportive, informative, and we did get a lot out of having him around.
He is an interesting soul.
Oh, he is totally fascinating. I mean, really. He's so multi-layered, I could just do a separate interview about him. Except I probably couldn't say a lot of the stuff I know.
Well, it's like it's the whole. I mean, just look at his body of work. I mean, you look at you look at an artist's work, you can kind of creep a little bit into the soul of that person. And if Fight Club is any indication, or Choke, or any of the other books that he's written,
they're into his soul for sure.
And they made a sequel to Fight Club up in comics, right?
Yeah, that was Chuck's project. He wrote it, and an artist did the artwork, of course. That was interesting. I also wanted to tell you, I actually don't know if you know this, Alex, but I'm writing a pilot based on his second novel, Survivor.
Oh, really?
To be a pilot for an ongoing series, we'll have to change the name, of course, because of the reality show.
Sure.
But it's his novel about a person who survived a religious cult. And then basically it focuses on after that, and he becomes a cult leader of a different kind, more on the national circuit, more not on a compound like he was, but a guru, a thought leader going around, traveling and being on television and all that kind of stuff.
A Tony Robbins kind of guy.
Yeah, right.
Wow. That's going to be, so hopefully on HBO or Netflix.
Yeah, we don't have, the company's paying me, and we don't have the studio or the network yet. Okay. So
hopefully it's a network where you guys can kind of just flourish and not have to worry about, I don't know if that would work on network television, hopefully cable or streaming. So you get some freedom.
It would not be welcomed in the doors of a network television broadcast.
So, no so much on NBC and ABC at this point in the game. From the creator of Fight Club comes.
Yeah, only if I like to have my ass hit steps as I bounce down out the exit door would I try to go into a
Oh, that would be fun. That would be a fun interview a fun meeting to watch, though, I'm sure. So how involved? So obviously Fincher was extremely involved in the screenwriting process with you, correct?
Oh yeah. And when I was doing the second draft and third draft, I go to his house. For a few weeks before actually just going back to myself and doing the draft, we would have these, daily meetings and go through everything. And it was just wonderful working with him. I remember by the time we were working on the end of the movie, he and I both got up and started, well, he could say this and he'd move over here, and we're going all around his living room.
Like just having fun, like really creating.
Yeah. Right.
What a shock. Amazing, isn't it?
Oh, creative people, you know how they are.
Well, I've heard that he's just brilliant in the sense of just he is so multi-layered and he knows a lot about a lot, and he's just one of those guys. I saw an interview with Morgan Freeman who said that he's just like, his mind is a steel trap. It's just remarkable to work with him on anything, and obviously his career has flourished over the years.
Yeah, right.
A bit.
Yeah, it has definitely been a great career. Yeah.
So when Fight Club was released, it was not a huge hit when it first came out. It was
domestically. Yeah.
Yeah, domestically, it's just kind of. Well, so was it a hit overseas?
Well, by their standards, yes.
Actually, by the studio standards.
And I don't know if it was in all countries, but it was, I believe, in England or the UK and some of the continental European countries. It was.
But here in the States, I remember when it came out, it's a hard movie to market. No one really knew how to.
Yeah, that was a really, after everything we went through and put it all together, and there it is, and it's just, Fincher's really put together this wonderful thing. It was like, marketing.
How do you market this? And I remember
I
seeing
had friends come up to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I remember seeing the posters of it up in my local theater, and I was like, I'm gonna go see that because I knew who Fincher was, and I knew I wanted to see Brad and all that. But I'm like, wow. Over the years, as you start analyzing, I'm like, man, that's a tough movie to sell. Like it's. Really?
Yeah. I had friends come up, maybe in the couple weeks after it was released, and they hadn't seen it yet, and they said, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to see it. It's it's about amateur boxing, right?" And I just, oh my God, I didn't know what to say. I was like, no,
no, it's not about amateur boxing by any stretch. But it was obviously a movie that was a slow burn. But it was very well received. Was it received well critically? I don't remember.
Well, it was mixed, but we did have some great champions like Janet Maslin of the New York Times, with just a glowing review. And the San Francisco and Chicago, we did pretty well. Not with the LA Times.
Oddly enough.
So it was mixed, which I kind of liked because that made me feel like, well, that's right. It should be mixed.
Yeah, if everyone loves this movie, there's a problem with society.
I kind of feel like, well, wait a minute, what's wrong? Everybody's not supposed to love this.
Exactly. So for you as a screenwriter, how was it like when this beautiful thing that you guys put together came out, and it was mixed and it wasn't a huge hit right away? How did it feel for you? This was at that point the biggest thing you had done, correct?
Well, it was my first produced film. The mixed reviews I was excited about, actually. I didn't like reading the negative ones,
of
but
course.
I was really jazzed that it was mixed. The box office, that was disappointing. And then when it was released on DVD and those sales skyrocketed through the stratosphere, it was so vindicating. It was just validating. It was great.
I must have purchased at least 4 or 5 different special editions of that damn movie. So your residuals, you got at least a few cents from me, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So enough about Fight Club, because God knows we've talked enough about that, but I could talk for hours about Fight Club. But can you tell me the craziest story that you can publicly tell us about working as a screenwriter in Hollywood?
The craziest story.
Yeah, just like, did that just really happen to me?
I think that probably if it's really about being a screenwriter in those moments, I'd probably say craziest thing is something really that I did, which I did it several times, which is when I was supposed to come in and pitch my take on doing an adaptation of something. Mm-hmm. I turned it into a full-on conversation with everyone in the room. And we all talked about it, and we had ideas about how you'd handle certain things and how you do it. And we'd have this long conversation. By the end of it, they go, great. And I got the jobs. But I never pitched, You
just would walk in and like, all right, guys, so what do you guys think about this? And let's see this.
I wouldn't start with, what do you think about it? I mean, that would be too much. I would start off actually talking about some things I thought of.
Right, first.
Then I would bring them into a conversation. And it was great because I hate pitching. I hate pitching. Where I'm just talking from beginning to end. Uh-huh. I hate it. But, of course, I've also done that, too, because there's been people that are not going to sit there and have a conversation. It's like, okay, what's the take, Jim?
Got it. Yeah, pitching is not something, I mean, it's an art form in itself.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of screenwriters who just don't dig it.
Yeah. I even thought about hiring a real sales-type guy to just do it for me while I'm sitting there,
That would be brilliant. Can you imagine walking into a studio meeting? I'm like, who's that? That's my pitch man. I'm just going to sit here. Oh, that has to go in a script somewhere. I mean, seriously, that is brilliant.
Well, I mean, it's, and the only reason it wouldn't work is they want to hear it from the writer. Unfortunately, it's a fantasy, but I don't think they'd go for it.
One day before it's all said and done and you cash up, you walk away, you should just do it for the hell of it. If
it was right before I was going to walk away, there's a lot of stuff I would do in a meeting. Some of it might be I get arrested for. But.
Fair enough. I'm sure you can tell some stories off air that were pretty entertaining. Now you did have a formal education at arguably one of the best screenwriting schools in the world. Do you think you need a formal education to be a successful screenwriter?
Well, I mean, what helped about it is the roundedness of it, the breadth of courses, and understanding a lot of different things about the world and studying a lot of different areas is certainly good for any writer. But I wouldn't say you have to have that. I think you have to have some kind of professional class that really teaches structure and everything else. But I would think that's pretty important, whatever form it takes. But it doesn't have to be, in the university system.
Got it. You can say? Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was it.
Okay.
I have a hallucination next to me who's sometimes murmuring. You might hear it, but
fair enough. Now, do you outline a story before you write it?
Well, I hate outlines. I hate pitches. I hate outlines. The reason I hate outlines is they're bloodless, lifeless statements of, you put down, in this scene, this emotional thing happens. Oh, really? Well, great. Okay. It's a clinical, technical description of what the script is supposed to be. And people want it because they want to know what the script is going to be. But when they read it, they don't know what the script is going to be. They know what the technical description, this cold, clinical collection of statements is. That's all they know. Mm-hmm. And they can go, I don't know. I don't feel it. Well, of course you don't feel it.
Because I haven't written it.
In it. Yeah. But I have to do them. I mean, I haven't always had to do them. Uh-huh. But some projects you have to do them. And I've just sort of cultivated getting better at making them seem to have feelings in them. That's the only way I can handle doing them.
Now, in your opinion, and there's two camps here for screenwriters and writers in general. Are you more in the character camp that drives a story, or plot camp, or both?
It's funny. I think I am in the character camp, but it seems like that when I'm thinking about character, I'm thinking about the plot as well. It's because I'm thinking about the character. I mean, it's not only thinking about the character solely as filling out a whole human being and making them three-dimensional and, all the texture with them. I'm thinking about them doing things and going through stuff. So I would say it's definitely heavily character-driven, generated, but I'm thinking about plot at the same time.
Now, how do you find the voice of a character, like as a writer? I mean, I know every writer is a little bit different, but how do you find your voice in your characters?
Well, I'll put two of them together and I'll just start writing scenes. I like to do I call it writing outside the script, and there's various forms it takes. One is scenes that are scenes that are not going to be in the script. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're just scenes that I put in any situation. And sometimes there are scenes that would come before the story of the script starts. And sometimes I interview the characters where it's, I type Jim and I type my first question. I type the character name and the answer. And I try to goad them, provoke them, get them angry, then get them, suddenly talking in a sentimental way about some memory or something, and then get them joking and laughing, and basically just get them all over the range with questions. And, it starts off, it's very, very mechanical at first, but they sort of start to come alive in an interview. It's interesting.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about Charlie Kaufman's adaptation. Pushing the character and asking the character. I just, for whatever reason, as a writer, I love watching that movie. It's one of my favorite movies as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
It's such a brilliant. Again, that's one of those movies that's outside the box, without question. Well, anything Charlie writes is pretty much outside the box.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you wrote plays before you got into screenwriting. How did that help you in your screenwriting craft?
Well, I mean, that was, it's characters behaving and talking. So that was the critical aspect of it that I carried over into screenwriting. Plays also have structure, and you have to write to that structure and build it well. And you have to build scenes so that a scene has, what is the purpose of the scene? What's the event of the scene? And then what's the takeaway from the scene? And all that thinking in playwriting are the same considerations you have in screenwriting. It's a completely different medium, but in a different form, because, of course, plays have long, extended scenes and on the same set, before the set changes. If it does, some plays take place on the same set the whole way through. Screenplays go all over the place and scenes are short, but you still have those considerations. Why does this scene exist? Why is it in this story? What's the event of it, and what's the takeaway from it? And it's also writing characters who are alive and vivid and behaving and speaking and doing things to each other.
Now, you spoke about structure. What is your take on the hero's journey structure, the 3-act structure, the 4-act structure? Is there something that you kind of always gravitate to? What is your thoughts on structure in general? Because I think that's something a lot of screenwriters, especially young screenwriters or starting out screenwriters, kind of forget.
Right. Well, I do basically go by the 3-act structure. It's, I may not slavishly follow it, but it's basically what I do with the structure. I mean, and the second act is the long act, and it's a very difficult act to write. It's one in which the build, really, you have to keep an eye on the build. You have to make this thing continually raise the level of the adrenaline in the audience watching, whatever type of story it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just talking about thrillers or something. But I did have a professor once say to me something very interesting, which is when an audience starts to watch something, their tolerance is very high. And that tolerance, for what they're watching, what's happening, decreases incrementally as time passes. So you can start off with anything happening, anything going on, and maybe it's mysterious, and the audience doesn't really, whatever. It's the opening. You're kind of just getting into it. The audience is totally ready to, let's do this. And then after a while, it's going to be, this better be going somewhere.
You're absolutely right. He was absolutely right.
And that attitude of this better be going somewhere gets more and more pointed as time goes on. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you it's sort of a structural overview to keep in mind as you're going through the whole thing.
Now, as a screenwriter and as a storyteller, things that you got away with in the 80s, or movies that got away with in the 30s or 40s, this audiences have become so much more sophisticated because of their bombardment of media and movies and stories, that it's becoming harder and harder for screenwriters and filmmakers to really do something that surprises them or keeps them enthralled or keeps them going. What's your feeling on that? Because I mean, things that played in the 80s don't play today. Like you couldn't release Commando today. In the 80s, it was wow, this is great, but now you'd be like, probably not going to fly. So what do you think? What's your feeling on that?
Well, at this point, movies have become basically two things: tent poles, usually, if not always, based on pre-existing material that has audience recognition, because that's the studio's clamor for safety in their investments.
Mm-hmm.
And the other type of movie is the independent film, or the independent-like film that's actually being done by a division in a studio.
Correct.
I like to think, there's a term Washington insiders and Washington outsiders and everything. And the indie film is outside the studio system, but the independent divisions of studios is like pretending to be outsiders while they're actually insiders,
Right, because that's another market. That's like, oh, wait a minute, let's get a piece of that market because there's money to be made.
Studios making independent film. Oh, it's an independent film, but we're putting it out,
Yeah, there's a cool little logo. It's not Paramount, it's Paramount Vantage. It's
right.
different. It's not the same. It's Fox 2000. It's not Fox,
Right. But thankfully they're doing it because that's another venue. But I think those are the two basically type of films. In the independent film, it's actually part of the ethos of the financial model that it be successful critically, and in festivals if it does go through the festival circuit. That's not the same commercial model for a tentpole. It's just it better be making money. And so independent films basically live or die by their quality, which, it's actually a very exciting thing about them, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's we're making our movie right now. Jilly, the star of our movie, and we're making our little movie. And
she's tremendous.
Yeah, and we're making our little movie, and it's truly an independent film. Fox 2000 or Fox Searchlight is not doing anything behind the scenes. We raised our money, and we're making a small little independent film for a small market. But the financial risk is low, extremely low, as opposed to Ghostbusters.
Right.
Which, after this last weekend that came out, as of this recording, it did not, it's not living up to the expectations of the studio. I'm from what I've read. Same thing with Independence Day. I mean, these big budget films these tentpoles that keep coming out there's been a lot of bombs this summer, like a lot of big.
Well, I mean, they use the word disappointment, and I actually go along with that. I mean, a bomb is a bomb. I mean, that's like,
Yeah, it cost $200 million and it made five.
Yeah, but a disappointment is it's not as big a hit, and that happens too. I mean, I really enjoyed Ghostbusters.
Okay. I'm dying to see it. So
it was a lot of fun, and but financial disappointment means, well, we wanted it to make more, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Or Independence Day, for that matter, or the BFG, the Spielberg movie that didn't do as well. Things like that. But do you believe in that whole Hollywood implosion that, there's going to be a moment that these studios are going to have, let's say a studio puts out 2 or 3 tentpoles and they all financially just die or not do well, and it could cripple a studio? Because some of these movies are 200 million, 250 million. I mean, look, the risk that they took on Avatar was massive back then. And
right.
I mean, that could have knocked Fox out. I mean, it really could have hurt them really badly if that movie did not do what it did. But imagine if Disney's $4.5 million investment in Star Wars, which is obviously not a risk, but if that Star Wars movie didn't do well, my God, I mean, that could have really hurt Disney. Do you believe in that whole like Spielberg and Lucas said that there's going to be a Hollywood implosion at one point, that the studio system is going to take a big hit and some of these studios are going to fall because they're just rolling the dice so much on these big tentpoles?
I don't know. I mean, it is a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. I don't know how many I don't know what you call it. It's not really co-production. It's distribution. Yeah. With 2 studios. I mean, that's been done in the past. I don't know how much they're going to try to do that in the future. It certainly is something that helps share the burden. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's a possibility. The implosion could happen. Now,
this is a loaded question, but it's a question I'm just curious to see what you think of. What is the greatest challenge for a screenwriter facing and staring at a blank screen?
Starting to type.
Just the first word.
I mean, really, I know it sounds like I'm just kidding, but actually I'm serious. Sometimes I just make myself type. It's like, okay, I'm tired. I'm not going to do this writer's block thing. I'm not doing it. So I just type. I just make myself type. I mean, I'm typing the scenes that, a scene I'm supposed to be working on, but I just do it. I mean, there's a point in, it's like they say with working out, exercise, just do it. That kind of, well, it's really true. It's sit there and start putting your fingers on the keys and typing. You may not feel a thing. You may feel like, oh, I just totally have no inspiration. I don't know what I'm going to type anyway. Mm-hmm. Just start typing. Because at some point, if you don't let yourself stop, you're going to get into it.
Eventually. So you don't sit around waiting for that muse to come and tap you on the shoulder?
Oh, no. That's the road to writer's block, which is that's... I look at that like a disease I don't want to get. I never want to go into that because I've known people who've been in there and they've been in it for months and months. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. I'll just type. I'll type gibberish if I have to, but I'm not going to get into writer's block. It's not going to happen.
You just got to you got to turn the hose on, and whatever comes out, comes out.
Exactly.
And eventually, that water will turn into wine.
That's true. It will if you just keep typing. It will.
So you also created a remarkable course online called the Screenwriters Toolbox. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. After I did it, I started to try to get some people to tweet about it and stuff like that. And they thought that because I said it wrong. I said, I did an online screenwriting course. And I forgot that there are ones that take place in real time that are over. Right. And that's not what this is at all. This is permanently there. It's a filmed lecture that's always there, that you can always get. So I wanted to make that clear first.
I'll make sure everybody knows the link to it. It will be in the show notes, and I'll mention it in the podcast as well.
All right, thanks. Yeah, no, it's meant to be the basics. So I cover the basics of format. I cover the basics of style, and by that I mean how you use things like going into a shot, because screenplays are supposed to be written mostly in the master scene format, because you're not supposed to direct on paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's cut to his face, cut to his hand, show this, show that. You're not supposed to do that. So I talk about using a master scene, but the permissible use of going to individual shots, and so that's kind of like handling the basic stylistic approach. And I talk about, starting a scene late and ending early, which is you don't want to write you want the scene to be as short as it can be, and you want to start absolutely where it has to start and not before. And you want it to end where it should end. And so that brings, that's part of that is what I call shoe leather, which is the stuff that really doesn't need to be in the script, Hey, Alex, where's a pencil? Oh, it's in a drawer over there under the calendar. Oh, thanks. Oh, yeah, I just opened the drawer here. Yeah, you're right. There's a pencil in here. No, I'm sorry.
I've read that script.
It doesn't need to be in the script. And you were talking about how audiences become more sophisticated. Part of that is you can shortcut a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
You can make transitions of cutting to a scene to something else without an interval scene, I guess you'd call it, or a scene between them. You don't have to show him go to his car or walk in the building, or even more things you don't have to show. You just go, bam, right from this scene into the next one, and the audience can follow because they're more capable of following a shorthanded film grammar now. And so you've got to write that way. So anyway, I cover things like that in the Creative Live course that I did.
Now, when you were saying that, one of the huge mistakes I've always seen in screenplays, and I've been in my early screenplays, I was guilty of it as well, is just telling everything and not showing. So no, or being economical with my words, like as opposed to two people. Hey, Jim, remember when we were in high school? Hey, wasn't Mrs. What's her name's class great? She was hot. Like there's a much better way of saying that statement or getting that information across, maybe in a couple words, or maybe even in a look, or maybe in something else. So the economy of that kind of information is something that is basically the screenwriter's job, right?
Yeah, well, one of the hardest things that we all face with it is exposition. It's information that has to get out, but you can't have two characters telling each other things they already know. They just can't do it,
because you don't do it in real life.
Right, you don't do it in real life. So, they can't sit there and say, you knew Mr. Williams and you didn't. Yeah, I knew Mr. Williams and you knew Mr. Williams. Yeah, we both knew it. Yeah, it's like you can't do that. It's
But we've seen movies. We've both seen movies that does that.
Yeah.
Without question. So,
or it can be a character telling the character something he doesn't know, but it's just a bunch of setup information that is not really a scene between two people. You can't do that either. So it's difficult to find a way to get information out with characters behaving naturally as they would in real life.
That is the job of the screenwriter. That's why they get paid well when eventually they get paid. So, what is the best advice you can give to a screenwriter just starting out today?
Well, if you're starting out, then that's actually what you're doing. You're starting, so you should be writing like a maniac because you're passionate. You love writing, right? So you should be doing it, writing one script after another. The advice I give to somebody who's actually going to write their first script is write your first script all the way through. Don't stop. Don't go back and revise while you're in the middle of it. You can make notes, but write forwards only to the words "the end." Write the whole first draft. I say that because I want to prevent people from rewriting Act One for the rest of their lives.
Yes, I've been in editing for a long time. I know that feeling.
And then I say, put that script aside. You wrote a rough draft, put it aside. No, can't touch it. No. Write a second screenplay and write that one all the way through with only writing forward, no going back, all the way to the end, and put that second script aside. Write a third script, same thing, all the way through to the end. You can make notes, but you can't go back and revise. Put the third script away and take the first one out. Now, you're a better writer. You're a better writer just for having written 3 scripts. You're going to approach the first script as a better writer. You're going to look at it more objectively because you haven't been looking at it for a while and your head has been in 2 different screenplays. Now you're going to go back and have a more masterful view of what should be done to that first script. And then you're going to apply the same thing when you go again to the second and the third script.
It's great. That is probably some of the best screenwriting advice I've ever heard. And seriously, it's like so simple, but yet so powerful and so just basic. You know, like
thanks. It's
you write 3 screenplays, you're going to be a better writer.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it too. We were talking about education classes and all that, but what I just said is one way that you're already making yourself a better writer on your own, just by yourself.
That's really, and it's something that I preach from the top of the indie film hustle mountain here, that it's about work and about showing up every day. As Woody Allen says, 90% of success is just showing up.
Right. Well, that's the same thing with Just Type. That's exactly the same thing.
Just type. Just keep writing. And I know a lot of screenwriters who are still like, I've been on my screenplay for a year. I'm like, Jesus, man. Like, Jesus, you got it. But what you've just said makes perfect. That's the difference between someone who's just going to be stuck in this one script for 7 years or someone who's going to build a career. At least have 30 scripts to go shop around. And probably out of those 30 scripts, maybe 2 or 3 of them are something that could be shopped.
Well, another thing I want someone to get past about that 3 scripts, write 3 scripts thing is emotionally, people can put a lot of expectation on the first script. I'm writing a script and now I want it to sell or get an agent or whatever. And all that stuff is swirling around in the person's head. So if they drop it after the first draft and go to a second screenplay, they've broken that cycle of having so much need for the first script to do everything for them and make their entire career happen.
It's what I call the home run derby. You only think you're going to go up to bat once, and you have to hit a home run. And if you miss and you strike out, well, that's it. As opposed to concentrating on hitting singles, because singles will eventually turn into home runs. You will get on base and you'll score. But because of all the singles you've hit, every once in a while they'll throw that pitch the right way and boom, you hit it out of the park.
Well, that's really good. That is, yes, I like that analogy a lot.
I just actually said that the other day on a podcast because I was like, guys, you got to stop this home run mentality because I've been in that home run mentality. And the funny thing is that what you're just saying now about screenwriting, I've started to do, but with directing. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've always had the same problem. I've been stuck on trying to make my first feature for 20 years. Mind you, the technology is changing. Now it's much more affordable. But now I just said, screw it. I'm just going to make my first movie. And I already have 2 other ones lined up. And I'm just going to keep shooting because I'm going to keep them at a certain budget level where I can keep shooting. And every day I shoot, I learn something new. And I'm doing it all myself. And it's all coming out great and blah, blah, blah. And you just got to keep doing it. And you're not putting all those eggs and that pressure on the one movie or the one script.
That's great what you're doing. Yeah, that's great.
it's something you have to do. And I think that it's great advice. That's seriously some of the greatest advice for a screenwriter I've ever heard. And I've had a lot of people on the show, and it's like, just write 3 screenplays straight and don't go back. And then after the third one, go back to the first one, and you'll be a better screenwriter. It's just, that's really, really, the best advice is always the simplest, I find.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm one of the things I like to impart is how much a person can learn on their own. And I'm not dissuading from taking a screenwriting course or anything, but
like the Screenwriters Toolbox.
Yeah. I want you to take my course, of course. Go to Creative Live and get my course.
I will give you the link.
But I like ways that writers can learn on their own and get better on their own. That's an important part of it. And it looks like that's what you're doing with directing as well. So I think that's helpful.
And it's also what Robert Rodriguez did before he made El Mariachi. He's like, I did 30 short films. They were bad. And I just kept doing them. And I got all the bad crap out of my way. And then I went off and did El Mariachi and then just kept going. But you need to get that bad stuff out. It's like your first script, which a lot of screenwriters think, like, my first script's going to win the Oscar. I'm like, that's extremely rare. It's extremely. I don't know if it's happened. I'm sure it has happened. Like, the first guy. Well, what was the Usual Suspects? I'm not sure if that was his first script, but I know there's some cases to be said that there was a screenwriter who first script was like, amazing. But generally speaking, that's the lottery ticket. Generally speaking, for the rest of us mortals, it takes time to develop our craft.
Right.
So what is these are questions I ask all my guests. So what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the film business?
The lesson that took the longest, it was most important, and it was a tough one to finally really, really learn, is to have your mind in the process and not in the result. Don't be obsessed about the result. Just stay in the process, because it may not get made. It may not happen. That's not what you're supposed to be thinking about. That's what causes ulcers. That's what causes anxiety, right? Be in the process. And it did take a long time for me to get away from constantly thinking about the result rather than the process.
It's enjoy the journey, not the destination.
Right.
Basically.
Well, don't obsess about the destination.
You get there eventually.
Right.
So what are your 3 favorite films of all time, in any order or any kind of films that just tickle your fancy at the moment?
Well, that's a really, really difficult question for me, because I like so many, and the span of going to films from the past, the deep past, international films, it's just...
Let's say domestic.
Really difficult for me to answer, but I can say that certainly one of them is Dr. Strangelove. It had a profound impact on me because of the tone. The tone is nearly impossible. It's
ridiculous.
One of the greatest tones of a movie that's ever been achieved, and I think that's the most difficult element of a movie to achieve, is the tone of it. And I then became obsessed with writing reality-based characters in a mix of comedy and drama or suspense or whatever it is as a style. That really impacted me.
Dr. Strangelove. Oh, anything Kubrick. I'm a huge Kubrick fan.
It's like I could start naming directors, or I could start naming countries, and
So which director? So if you can't name 2 other movies, what are 2 directors who just blow up your skirt?
Well, in all honesty, I have to say David Fincher is one of them. And I know that's not the same as somebody viewing their work only, because I did work with him, but also viewing his work. He and Kubrick and Spielberg, who has this way of he pulls you so in that you just believe whatever he wants you to believe. It's just amazing. So, I mean, I could go on with directors. It's like, that's,
Scorsese. And,
Scorsese. My God, that was a big, Mean Streets was also a huge influence on me in terms of tone and the way characters can behave, and it can be funny and it can be scary. And I mean, and that applies to his other movies as well.
Oh, Goodfellas. I mean, and
certainly Taxi Driver and Raging Bull are like, it's, wow, you're just on a tight wire of anything, it's dangerous, funny, scary, exciting. It's, so yeah, Martin Scorsese's way up there. I mean, that's why I don't like to list, because I'm going to leave somebody out in the moment. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
Leave a movie out in the moment. And,
yeah, I mean, we could sit down and just geek out about movies and for days, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, and Orson Welles, certainly is another major favorite of mine.
And when you saw Mean Streets, I mean, you saw it when it came out. Like, I saw Mean Streets later on.
No, I saw it later.
Oh, you saw it later?
Yeah, I saw it later.
Okay, so it was, but it was still, it's hard for people to feel like when you see Mean Streets, like, at the moment, that was something really, like, out there. Same like Easy Rider. Like, you look at Easy Rider now and you're like, oh, that's kind of okay. Or Blade Runner. You're like, oh, that looks nice. But like, when that came out, there was nothing like it.
Yeah, mind-blowing. I still think it is, but,
No, I mean, I'll put up Blade Runner against, many things going on today.
Right.
many movies. So, Jim, where can people find you? Online, not your personal home address, just online. I have to really clarify. I've had a few guests go, what? I'm like, no, like online.
Right. I don't have my own website, but I on Twitter I'm WoHoJack, WoHoJak.
Okay. You're gonna get a lot of stalkers now. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's Twitter. I'm used to it. It's everybody else is used to it. So there you go.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yeah, I do. Just under my own name.
All right. I'll put the links to where you can find Jim and his personal home address in the show notes.
But you can't find me there, though. That's the problem.
Exactly. You're always all over the place. Jim, man, thank you so much for this has been an absolute joy and pleasure talking to you. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you. It's been great talking to you too, Alex. Really terrific conversation.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks.
I told you. I mean, that was such a fun, you have no idea what a thrill it was for me to be interviewing Jim Uhls. I mean, as a kid growing up watching Fight Club and studying and analyzing Fight Club over the years, it is such a thrill having him on the show. And he brought the goods and then some. That piece of advice, write those 3 screenplays, is, I mean, seriously, as simple as that sounds, guys, it is kind of the basis of everything. And I'm glad he liked my analogy of the home runs, because I really do think that's a lot of times what filmmakers and screenwriters do, is they put all that pressure on that first movie or that first screenplay, and when it doesn't go, they get discouraged and they fall out. And I just want to say something on the side note, guys. As you guys are listening to this, because you are creative artists, you are content makers in one way, shape, or form, whether that be a writer or a filmmaker or an artist. And it is your responsibility as an artist to succeed. Now, I know that sounds weird, but you have a responsibility to the world to get your voice out there. All right? Because you have no idea, like I said before, you have no idea the impact your work as an artist could have on another human being. You have no idea. And I do speak from experience with this, with what I've done with Indie Film Hustle and with my past films and what I've done in the past. You can change the course of one person's life that could change the course of many other lives. So it's your responsibility, whether it's making a song, whether it's writing a movie, making a movie, creating a YouTube channel, putting up content. You have no idea what the impact of your art will be. So, God damn it, it's your responsibility. So get to it, will you? And stop messing around. So as promised, I was going to give you guys a link to Jim's amazing course called the Screenwriters Toolkit. So all you got to do is go to indiefilmhustle.com/toolkit. That's indiefilmhustle.com/toolkit, and you'll take you right to Jim's course. And if I were you, I would definitely pick it up. It is really, really, really cool. So now, guys, if you want to be part of the Indie Film Syndicate, which is our amazing filmmaking community that we've created that is flourishing, and we're talking and helping filmmakers out in the community, it's really, really amazing. And they're getting access to a ton of stuff that I've been able to put up there as far as courses are concerned on screenwriting, on filmmaking, on distribution, on film festivals, on all sorts of great, great things, on cameras and cinematography and so on, and new content going up every month. And of course, the micro budget film, a feature film masterclass, which is analyzing This Is Meg as I Make It. You definitely should check it out, guys. IndieFilmSyndicate.com. And I will be opening up in the next few weeks after I'm done shooting This Is Meg. But we're going to have a small window where you can have lifetime access to the membership, to the community for one flat rate. So that is something coming up in the next few weeks. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But definitely, guys, check it out, IndieFilmSyndicate.com. As for the coming weeks, I've been stockpiling a ton of amazing interviews with great filmmakers like Diane Bell, who won Sundance. And we go through the entire what happened to her and her crazy ride, roller coaster ride at actually being in Sundance and winning Sundance, and a bunch of other new guests coming up very, very soon, as well as some more hard-hitting, raw episodes of some subject matters that I think need to be discussed. So they might be coming up very soon. So keep an eye out or an ear out for that. Please, guys, share this information with as many people as you can. Okay, I want to help as many people, and I want this information to get out to as many artists and as many filmmakers, as many screenwriters as I can, because I really hope what we're doing here at Indie Film Hustle can help the world a bit. I know that's grandiose, but help the world a bit and help create some good art that can hopefully change the way things are in the world. I know that sounds foo-foo. Oh, that hippie from LA. But in all honesty, I really do hope that. So please share every episode you can, or the episodes that move you or touch you. Of course, just send them always to indiefilmhustle.com. And if you really love the podcast and love the content that we're creating, head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave us a good review, hopefully. That really helps out our ranking and helps us out to get the show seen by more and more people. So thanks again. The show notes for this episode are at indiefilmhustle.com/089 and have links to everything me and Jim talked about in the episode. And as a treat, I will leave you today with The Philosophy of Life by the one, the only, Tyler Durden. Keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
You know, man, it could be worse. A woman could cut off your penis while you're sleeping and toss it out the window of a moving car.
There's always that. I don't know, it's just when you buy furniture and tell yourself, that's it, that's the last sofa I'm gonna need. Whatever else happens, got that sofa problem handled. I had it all. I had a stereo that was very decent, a wardrobe that was getting very respectable, close to being complete.
Shit, man, now it's all gone.
All gone. All gone.
You know what a duvet is?
Comfort.
It's a blanket. Just a blanket. Now, why do guys like you and I know what a duvet is? Is this essential to our survival in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word? No. That's me. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a terrible tragedy.
It's just stuff. Tragedy.
Well, you did lose a lot of versatile solutions for modern living.
Fuck, you're right. No, it's... my insurance is probably going to cover it. So. What?
Things you own end up owning you.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.